I am a biologist and a philosopher and nature writer, and I live in Berlin and in the Italian Apennine Mountains. And my intention is to help us understand aliveness and help us get a new picture of what actually life is about on the level of a biological and philosophical description, but also on the level of experiencing how it feels to be alive and what entails this. So that's my my life's work, I could say, and I'm mainly writing about this. I've trained, among others, with a cognitive biologist and theoretical biologist, Francisco Varela. So he was a Spanish-speaking guy coming from Chile, and I had the great luck to be his student, and so he's a very dear teacher. So he's very influential in my work, and he was also trying to understand what is life, which is unusual for contemporary biology. It's interesting. I realized that when I was doing undergraduate studies in biology, that actually, if you train in biology at the university, nobody will tell you what their idea of life is. They will just tell you, okay, we can describe organisms as machines and with causal mechanic ideas, but we can't tell you what life is. That's not the right question here. Go somewhere else. Okay, a little bit. Yeah, I think I always had the interest for this subject. Already when I was very little, when I was a kid, I was friend to various animals, and I had these fascinations for some animals. I was obsessed by owls and by frogs and by bats. And so I had this very, very close connection to other than human living beings all the time, all my life. And I can't tell you when this started, because it started so early that I don't remember. And then I also experienced very early on the destruction of the lives of other than human beings. As I saw this happen, and as my father was a botanist, and he was engaged in environmental protection, so he showed me, and I was so I knew this from my early childhood, and it became a pain from early childhood, because there were these places I used to play and to roam, which then vanished and became a shopping mall or an intensive agricultural terrain. So I knew this all my life, and it has been the most pertinent driver to do what I do, because I wanted to really show others that we are connected to life at the core of our being, and we cannot ruin this without vanishing together with it. So that was really, really a profound motive. So what I found lacking in ecology was the perspective of a self who experiences what is happening. I found this first when I was a student, and I was required to shut off my experiencing self. So I couldn't experience nature or other beings, but I had to measure them and calculate them, and I needed to shut this off. So I found this was wrong, because it was part of my aliveness. So this should be part of the picture. And then I realized that this is also valid for other beings. So our idea that organisms are just things, very intricate things working like little machines, in my view, became, or during my studies, became more and more flawed. So, and I realized that actually every being is driven by the subject interest to unfold his or her aliveness. And if we look at this from this perspective, then everything alive isn't neutral at all. Everyone is deeply immersed in an experience of meaning and of things going well or things going less well. Everything is profoundly about feeling, and then in this respect, humans are not that very much different from other beings. And so we need to change our view about ourselves, and we need to change our view about other beings. And this goes very well with some findings in biology, and that's part of what I've been trying to show in this book. You've used the word non-duality. It takes me some time to get there, because it wasn't what I started with. I didn't come there. I didn't go there from a desire for non-duality or from any sort of spiritual perspective. I came there from the irrefutable perspective of my own experiential way of being alive, and from looking at how can we understand organisms. So it was actually very modest, but this brought me to the fact that, and now enters non-duality. This brought me to the description that every material has this inner side of experience and this outer side of being organized in a body, and it is always together. It is never detached. You can't detach this. It's always together. So this might count as non-duality, actually, but it's very biological nonetheless. I'm talking about poetics or poetic viewpoint, because if living beings are experiencing their world according to what it means for them as selves, then everything is meaningful. So everything is also expressive. And then we're profoundly in the realm of a world in which attitudes, things, gestures express something about themselves through their bodies. So we're in a sort of poetics of life, or poetics of nature. This is what brought me to the use of this term. And I'm sometimes I call what I'm doing biopoetics even. So that's one piece of this. So this goes very much into the direction of joining forces with that so far normally only that faculty of understanding and meaning and interpretation, which normally is reserved for humans. So for me, this is a part of the living world. So that's one side. And now you ask, but how is this related to my view that nature is not a capitalist market with efficiency and competition, but it is a huge commons of relating. And this goes, the things meet in the in how I view bodies come about. And I mean, for this, it's important to read the book, because it's difficult to describe this in a few sentences. But the interesting thing is that all these beings, us and all the other beings, we have this this desire for realizing ourselves, as subjects. But we can do this only if we continuously share our bodies. So we need to eat, so we need others, and we need to breathe, and we breathe what others have breathed out, like we breathe what the trees breathe out, and we take it up and build it into our body. So actually, on the embodied level, on the level of objects, of parts of our bodies, this world is totally shared. It's a crazy sharing economy, and then I was realizing actually, you know, so we have this dimension of soul or experience only because these bodies want to exist, and they want to exist because they break down, because they are shared. So only because everything is shared, everything is felt through. But if everything is shared, it means that we don't have little object egos fighting one another. We have a huge commons of codependent creation, we could call it, reciprocal creation. And this is totally different from what the mainstream biology has been painting from the middle of the 19th century on. So actually, and I still think it's a great idea, and I still think it hasn't really been taken up as it should be. The idea that the biosphere is a commons. It's a commons in which every being participates, from which every being is fed, and to which every being needs to give, and ultimately will contribute with its whole body by dying. It's far-reaching. It's absolutely far-reaching. So if the biosphere is a commons, then every form of economic exchange, which is not participating in this commons, but is cutting off something and taking it and selling it, will ruin it, will destroy this commons of the biosphere. So from a biological standpoint, the capitalistic idea of little objects competing with one another is completely wrong. And if you pursue it, it will destroy the world as it is, because this always happens. If you have the wrong tool for something, you destroy it. If you have a hammer and you want to make a cake, you ruin it. For me, it's a very old feeling. As I told you, I've been feeling this all the time. And I mean, if it's anxiety, it is always very much instructed by personal fear of losing nice things, which at the moment we're still enjoying. And so for me, this word is always a little bit too much from the egocentric perspective, actually. You know, what my predominant feeling is profound sadness about the disappearance of so many friends, of so many relatives, of so many beings with whom I share my perception and with whom I create my perceptions in beauty. Just to quote Plato, the Symposium, creating in beauty, that's what you need to do, actually. You do it if you live with other beings in togetherness and you enjoy life. You enjoy being in this breathing planet, in this jewel of a blue marble in space. So for me, it's very much, my feeling is very much oriented towards the loss of the others. And I really profoundly grieve this. And it's actually horrible, because I cannot switch this off. I always see it. I have the eyes for it. I see the damage. Other people don't see it. They're not trained. They're not biologists. So they see, oh, it's nice and green. It's okay. And I see there's only one species. It's horrible. Okay, so it's less anxiety. It's more grief. But on the other hand, it's clear that I see a profound changes already happening, which will completely transform our society together. The planet, the transformed planet, will transform our society. And I look at all the multi-crises of the moment from the perspective of ecological breakdown. So if we have a war, and in the center of the war is fossil fuel, then it has to do with ecological breakdown and climate breakdown. And if we have a pandemic, pandemics, which was actually which was expected from the specialists because of humans interfering too much with ecosystems, then it's also part of this. So I see actually we are already in the phase of ecological breakdown, and it's profoundly sad. Sadness, that's my feeling. Profound sadness. So first, let me thank Kairós for having a nice title in Spanish as well. Vivificar, like it very much.
Yes, it sounds very, very good here in Spain too.
Yeah, and it's also, it sounds very good also in to my ear. I don't speak Spain so well, but I speak Italian very fluently. So it's a nice title, and it's difficult to translate the word. So in the German version has the English title, which didn't really help, but it was so difficult to translate it, so they just took the English title. So actually, I remember very well when I found this title, because I didn't find it. A colleague of mine found it. She was she still is she works for a German ecological foundation, and Heike Löschmann. I have to give my credits to her. She found this word, and she said actually it's like enlightenment, which is the English word for this epoch in the 18th century, when people discovered that they have a rational mind and they don't need to believe everything they're told. And then Enlightenment produced all this feverish technological rubbish. So I was thinking we need to do this for life. And then came enlivenment. So it's the discovery of the fact that we are alive. We're not just body machines, and we're not just rational minds. We're alive, and that means we are profoundly connected to all other living beings, and we are also profoundly feeling our aliveness, and we're feeling this connection. So the idea of this subjective feeling experience is very, very prominent in the idea of enlivenment. So we're in a living cosmos. This cosmos is full of life, and this cosmos is actually really, really profoundly desiring to produce life. Or we could even say life is something you cannot kill, or the desire for life. We can only help it, or we can somehow block it or hinder it. So it's truly, enlivenment is about discovering the cosmos as profoundly alive, and everything in it as well. So I would say the problem is not reason. The problem is what we think reason is. So I would actually say, let us keep reason, but let us understand what it really is, and let us not be colonized by people who say that reason is only controlling abstraction. This is wrong. So I'm actually not advocating ecstatic irrationality or whatever. I wouldn't say no, we only need to follow our feelings, because this would be another extreme. We need to be whole. So we need to put everything in action, which is part of reason. And you see, if I was an indigenous elder, and you asked him, and he could say something like, if I want to take a reasonable decision, I will go and talk to the trees, and they will tell me. And you see, a Western enlightened white male person would say, well, this is completely foolish, this is crazy, trees don't speak, and they don't speak English. But you see, as I said before, we are breathing in what the trees breathe out, and vice versa. Trees breathe in what we breathe out. So we are profoundly connected on an existential level, on the level which allows life to flourish. So it is actually a very good idea to ask a tree, because he is so much connected into the process of life. And you see, there's so many questions. If we ask the trees, they would have said no, and it would have been right. They would have said, no, don't do this. It's wrong. It's foolish. It's crazy. You'll kill life. So what I want to say is we need to include into reason all the other faculties of living communication. So we need to include how that feels. So feeling needs to go into this. We need to include how we perceive this through our senses. And we need to also include our intuition as persons who are connected to the center of the living cosmos. So we are able to work with intuition, and we need to include thinking, for sure. I mean, excluding thinking is absolutely crazy. We can do so many beautiful things thinking, but if we just say thinking needs to control everything else, then it will go wrong. So you see, I'm not against reason. I'm only for decolonizing it and giving it back its its full distributed, shared living power. That would be good. That would be great.